On surface, this seems like a totally logical way to answer behavioral questions. But unfortunately for me, I couldn't convert even a single one of my behavioral interviews using the STAR technique. It was not until I got an interview for Amazon and really started to pay attention to what was going on did I realize that the STAR technique had three major flaws. What are these three big problems with the STAR technique? Let's go through that. You're listening to Fearless Career Moves. I'm your host, Richa Bansal, founder of Pink Careers, award-winning executive career coach, and former Amazon leader, here to help ambitious women ditch imposter syndrome, lead boldly, make more money, and build careers they love on their own terms. Women can have it all, and I'm here to show you how. Let's get into it. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Fearless Career Moves podcast. Well, as I sat down today to record today's episode, I got really excited because in this solo episode, I am going to talk to you about one of my favorite strategies that we use with our clients to help them convert their interviews into multi-six-figure offers. So today's episode is going to be super tactical. We will work through my step-by-step process on how to answer behavioral interview questions, especially if you are targeting leadership roles. So if you are actively in the job search market and are targeting senior roles like senior IC, manager, staff, director, VP, regardless of the function that you belong to, regardless of whether you are in product, program, strategy, supply chain, finance, this is going to be an important episode for you. So you want to grab yourself a notebook and pay attention. And if you're kind of like me and you're listening to this episode in the gym or on the run or while you're driving, make sure that you take a second to bookmark this episode so they can always go back to the strategy that I will share with you today. I also want to say that if you are not actively in the job search market, you still want to pay attention to this episode. Because what I'm going to teach you today has not only helped all of our job search clients, but it has helped many of my clients land internal promotions for which they were previously told you are not ready. So today's episode is going to be very, very important from that sense, and I cannot wait to get started with you. All right, so I want to share with you a little background for where this topic actually came about. So the topic for today's episode is largely inspired by my own experience as a job search candidate. It was a few years ago when this happened, and it was right about COVID time. When COVID had hit, both me and my husband, we had both lost our jobs of 10 years. So for some context, I used to work for Schlumberger, which is a large oil and gas services company. Both me and my husband, we worked for Schlumberger for over 10 years. And in my last role with Schlumberger, I was a group program manager, which meant that I had a large team of engineers that reported to me. I had a budget, I had a P&L, everything, the whole shebang. So right after I got laid off, I decided to pick up a role in corporate strategy with a small, very small, privately owned company. And I thought, I have been working for this large organization for so long. I want to do something different. So I was like, okay, let's make a big change. And I went from working for a Fortune 200, I think Schlumberger was a Fortune 200 company at the time, to working for a very small privately owned company in my family. But very quickly, I found myself getting bored. There is only so much work that I had to do strategy, to do corporate strategy at a small firm. So very quickly, I found myself bored. And within a few months, I was ready for my next exciting challenge. So like everybody else, I brushed up my resume, I gave my LinkedIn a facelift, and I got to work. And the interviews actually started to roll in. I had interviews from Google. I remember I had gotten an interview from Facebook, Shopify, DoorDash, and a few others, right? And so I had some good interviews rolling in. I was super, super excited for these roles. But you know what? I hadn't really interviewed in a long time. My interviewing skills were a little bit rusty because the last time that I had actually seriously given an interview was at least a few years, at least 5 years ago. I mean, back in 2017, when I finished up my MBA, I had given a few interviews as I was looking for opportunities to change, but I wasn't very serious even then. So to prepare, I turned to the most popular interviewing method, the STAR technique. Well, if you've ever interviewed before, you likelihood is that you have heard of the STAR technique. And for those of you who might not know what STAR stands for, it is a storytelling technique for answering behavioral interview questions. And it stands for situation, task, action, result. So essentially, you start with describing what was the situation, what was the problem you were trying to solve. Then you talk about what your responsibility was in that situation or task, what task you were assigned in that situation. Next, you talk about the actions or the steps you took to address that situation. And finally, you describe the results that you achieved. On surface, this seems like a totally logical way to answer behavioral questions. But unfortunately for me, I couldn't convert even a single one of my behavioral interviews using the STAR technique. It was not until I got an interview for Amazon and really started to pay attention to what was going on did I realize that the STAR technique had three major flaws. So, what are these three big problems with the STAR technique? Let's go through that. Number one, well, the STAR technique starts off with situation where you give the context of the problem and describe the necessary details of the problem. Then you go into tasks where you talk about what is it that you were assigned, what task were you assigned. And it is so easy to get lost in the details, over explain the situation, over explain the things that you did, the things that you executed with your project specific jargon, that you lose interest of the interviewer. And as soon as the interviewer checks out, especially if they check out in the beginning of your answer, then they are not going to listen to the rest of your answer as well. So that's problem number one. The second problem is that the STAR technique doesn't highlight the challenge that you were trying to solve. This is one place I found myself really stumbling. So, yes, this was the context, this was the problem, but why are we trying to solve this problem? I've also seen many times that my clients stumble at the exact same thing that I was struggling with, especially when I work with these high achieving women, especially women of color. Women are very, very comfortable talking about the things they did, the tasks they were assigned, the responsibilities that they had. But so many times I find the very same women completely discounting the big challenge they solved and really glossing over it like it was no big deal. And when they use the STAR format, without the prompt to really highlight that challenge in their story, without somebody like poking them that, hey, talk about why this matters, they do not give any detail of the big business issue that was at hand or the big business problem that they solved. And finally, the STAR technique robs you of the chance to show leadership maturity to the hiring manager. One of the things that I want you to remember that if you are targeting senior leadership roles, the company is not only hiring you for your great execution skills, but the company really also wants to know how did you use the experience that you just had and made the organization better from it? How did you learn from your experience? What did you learn from your experience, whether that experience was good or bad? And how did you create even greater value for the organization next time? So when I realized that there are these three fundamental flaws with the STAR technique, that's when I created the SOAR Storytelling Framework to prepare for my Amazon interviews. More than anything, the SOAR framework is a storytelling technique. In fact, when I think about the SOAR framework, I think about my favorite movie and an all-time classic from Bollywood called Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. Let me paint a picture for you on how this movie actually goes for those who have not seen this movie. So this is like a Hindi classic, and in this movie, Shah Rukh Khan, who is the main actor, he is a carefree guy and he meets this beautiful, beautiful girl, Kajol. Her name is Simran in the movie. And life is great and they are having fun and they get together and they are the lifelong love for each other. But suddenly they realize that Kajol's dad is going to be the roadblock to their happy ending. So Shah Rukh Khan takes an out-of-box approach by staying at Kajol's house as her brother's newly found friend, goes out of his way to win the respect of his girlfriend's dad. Things all seem to be going well until the dad finds out that Shah Rukh Khan is the same rowdy, drunken guy who had disrespected him many months ago and puts a stop to their love story. Then, in a last minute show of great personal leadership, empathy, and resilience, Shah Rukh Khan pacifies the dad, saves the day, and wins the love of his life. Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, or DDLJ for short, ran for 10,000 days straight and is one of the highest grossing films in Indian cinema. And the core reason is because this movie has action, this movie has drama, and this movie has emotion. And that's what you want to have in your interview stories as well. The SOAR framework gives the interviewer a reason to be engaged in your storytelling because you have action, you have drama, and you have emotion in your story. When you have all these three things, the hiring manager is able to remember you for your incredible storytelling, for your incredible business results, and your incredible ability to always save the day. In short, the SOAR storytelling technique allows you to be the hero in your story. Let me repeat that again. The SOAR storytelling technique allows you to be the hero in your own story. So many of us forget to be the hero in our story. But it is your story, it is your experience. It is up to you to show others why it was so important to solve the problem and how you actually became the hero who saved the day. So that is what we are going to learn in the SOAR storytelling technique and how we frame it. Okay? So not only did I use the SOAR storytelling technique when I created it to land a multi-six-figure offer at Amazon, I have now taught the same technique to over 20,000 women through my signature webinar, The Recession Proof Your Career. And I have taught the same technique to hundreds and hundreds of my coaching clients inside our signature career accelerator, the Fearless Hire. Okay. The Fearless Hire, for those of you who don't know, is my signature career accelerator for ambitious women who are ready to stop playing safe and build a dream career in life on their own terms. Okay. Who are ready to go from being underpaid and under-recognized to be in demand and land six-figure, multi-six-figure offers anywhere from startups to fast-growing companies to Fortune 5 companies. So let's break down the SOAR format. SOAR is an acronym for SOARR. Yes, with an extra R. So SOAR stands for situation, obstacle, action, results, and reflection. Let's go through each one of them. So first off, we have situation. So S for summary and situational context. The goal here is to start with a 20-second summary, like a bird's eye view of the overall story that you are going to share with an interviewer, complete with a quantitative or qualitative impact. So an example here would be, I would like to tell you about a time when I mitigated delays in the delivery of our company's flagship product, saving the company $2 million in regulatory fines. So that could be an example of this bird's eye 10 to 20 second summary of what is the story you are about to share with the interviewer. Next, you want to set the context for the situation. But instead of going into the rabbit hole of details, you want to keep the situational context high level and talk about the overall business impact for your product and service that you are responsible for. Okay? So limit your situational context to no more than a minute long. Okay? Even shorter. Then we come to O. O for obstacle. So this next letter is where you talk about the major challenge that you are trying to solve in the story. Okay? And you talk about the impact of that specific problem if you didn't solve it. So this is where you start to get into the details of exactly what you were responsible for versus what your team was responsible for. You may talk about what you were working on versus your team. And in other words, really what you want to stress upon is if this problem was not solved, how would your team, your business, your organization suffer? This is super, super powerful. And in fact, the biggest differentiator with the popular but ineffective STAR format that we just discussed. Because when you can show that not only do you understand the technical problem and what needs to be done to solve it, and you can actually show that I also understand the business problem, then you really resonate with business leaders. So again, with obstacle, the question that you want to answer is, if I didn't solve the problem that I solved, how would have my business suffered? How would have my team suffered? How would have my organization suffered? And so you move out from the technical problem into the business problem. What is a business problem? Let me expand on that a little bit more. A business problem means that you are solving for either revenue that the company brings or the costs that the company incurs. Okay. Those are the only two big, broad business problems, the dollar problems that the company faces. So fundamentally, every company's primary goal is to make money. Yes, there are mission-driven companies. Yes, companies have a social, several companies have strong social cause, but a company, a for-profit company cannot be in existence if they do not bring in profits. So a business problem at the highest level is the company making revenue, and how can the company make more revenue? Or is the company incurring cost, or how can you decrease the cost that the company is incurring? And so in obstacle, I really, really challenge you to talk about how the problem that you solved help the company solve a business problem. Okay. In other words, had you not solved this problem, would the company have lost revenue, or would the company have incurred more costs? All right. The next letter in SOAR after situational, context, and obstacle is actions. So in actions, this is where the rubber actually meets the road and where you want to really spend the bulk of your time. And this is where also I find most people get lost. When people talk about actions, I find that many of my clients who have been following the STAR framework prior to coming inside the Fearless Hire, they find themselves going into circles, going into rabbit holes, rambling. And this is where I really think that when the actions bit is done right, using one of the techniques I'm going to discuss with you, and this is really where I think the actions bit, when done right, can really work in your favor. Because the actions bit, the actions portion of the SOAR framework, is really where you become the hero of your story, where you come in and save the day. So in the actions bit, you want to talk about how you took specific actions to mitigate or control the situation. And to prevent the rambling, to prevent going into circles, to prevent going into rabbit holes, I want to recommend using the power of three. Okay. So our clients, we always recommend to our clients to use the power of three to organize all their actions. In fact, there was a 2001 study by Nelson Cowan in Behavioral and Brain Sciences journal that found that human short-term memory limit is actually only 3 or 4 chunks of information. Anything more than that, and we lose the attention of the listener. So organize your actions into 3 buckets, 3 steps, 3 phrases, 3-step approach that you took, 3 areas that you look at. Okay. What it does, it stops you from rambling. It helps you organize your thoughts, and it's attention grabbing because it shows to the other person that you had some thought, some structure in the way you approach the problem. All right, let's talk about R. So situation, obstacle, actions, result. R for results. This is where you want to talk about the results that impacted business. Okay. We want to sum up each and every one of your answers by showing that business impact of our work is the same business impact that we alluded to when you were talking about the obstacle. Okay. And you want to quantify your business impact. Wherever possible, you want to quantify your business impact. What was the dollar impact on the business? You want to share whether your approach worked to turn the situation around, what were the primary business impact, and then you can also talk about some secondary benefits of your action. So maybe there were some technical benefits, or there were some downstream benefits of your action. For example, like your business result could be an increase in revenue, a decrease in cost, an increase in productivity, increase in defect rate. And then some downstream impacts could be maybe uptime increased for something, for a machine that you were responsible for, or maybe headcount reduced because of some of the work that you are doing and bringing efficiencies. So you can, in the result, you want to start off with a business result, which is a dollar impact, and then you can get into secondary impact as well. And then finally, you want to talk about reflection. R for reflection. The final R is for reflection. And this is the place for you to show leadership emotional maturity as a candidate. Remember, I talked about the STAR framework robs you of an opportunity to show what did you learn from this experience. But as a leader, you really want to talk about maybe I made a mistake and I did not execute well and I did not have a positive experience, but I learned something from it so that this negative experience never repeats itself. Okay. So in either case, whether you had a negative experience, you made a mistake, you had a near miss, or whether you had a positive experience where you actually solved a problem, where you actually saved the day, in both cases, there's opportunity to learn and opportunities to make sure that either the mistake doesn't repeat by yourself or anybody else, or the benefits of the good work that you did actually benefit the broader organization. So that is what you want to talk about in the reflection. So let's go over it again. The 5-step process was SOAR: situation, obstacle, actions organized into 3 buckets, results, and reflection. Inside my coaching program, The Fearless Hire, I use my step-by-step method to help my clients reflect on each of their experience in a structured way so that they are able to answer any follow-up question that comes their way. In fact, one of the ways that we truly believe in preparing for interviews is to not prepare with common questions. So we do not prepare our clients using common questions as a starting point. Like most people, that's what they do. Like most people, they would use questions like, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with a stakeholder, or tell me about a time when you failed. And most people that I know, they use these common questions as starting point to prepare for their interviews. But that's very backwards. That's quite backwards because you can never really anticipate all the questions that come your way. Instead, what you want to do is you want to use the SOAR method to prepare and really kind of reflect on your experiences in a structured way. And what that does, it allows you to be able to take any parts of your experience and plug it in a structured way for any question that comes your way. And this gives my clients 100% confidence that they will be able to tackle any difficult, any googly question that comes their way, because this reflection exercise where they are reflecting on all of their experience and what they did and why they did it, and kind of go into 2, 3, 4 layers to prepare in depth for their stories, to prepare in depth for their experience, gives them a really, really strong inventory of stories to pull from and talk about in a variety of different questions, in a variety of different leadership challenges. So there you have it. My signature SOAR storytelling framework for answering behavioral interview questions for leadership roles. This framework has been a game changer for my clients in terms of skyrocketing their confidence, not only during the interview phase, but throughout the entire job search process. Because it's really, when you think about it, the way the SOAR structure works, talking through why the problem is important, what you did and the result, is really what you should be putting in your resume as well. That is really what you should be bringing in your informational chats when you network. And really, that is what you build your case on when you do salary negotiation. So it's really the SOAR structure helps you not only during the interview process, it helps our clients all the way from how they think about their resume and the type of information they put in their resume to the type of conversations they have during the networking process that moves them through the interview process to actually negotiating higher salaries. In particular, I was kind of thinking about one of my clients, Nikita, who really used this logic, the SOAR logic, to build her counter offer and negotiated a 15K increase in her offer because when she worked through the SOAR framework, she knew the outcome of some of her work was very significant and quite similar to what the company was looking for. And she was able to bring that into the counteroffer to make sure that the hiring manager understood the value she was bringing and to get her started. I had another client, Elena, who negotiated a 20K sign-on bonus simply because she was able to use the SOAR framework during the interviews. And She had completely knocked out the interview out of the park, and the company was willing and ready and so much ready to get her started as soon as possible. Remember, I said that if you are not actively in the job search market, you still want to pay attention. And that's because many of my clients have told me personally that they have used the SOAR framework to completely change the way they talk at work. Many clients have said that they now think in business impact. They always think in the terms of like what business impact my work is creating. And that has really improved the way they communicate with their stakeholders, with sister teams, the way they give status updates to leadership, the way they have career conversations with their manager. In fact, last month, I even recorded a testimonial with a client who used the SOAR framework to finally demonstrate the leadership impact that she was already creating through her work and got promoted to a director level role. And it's the same role that she was rejected for just a few months ago. So it is that powerful. I really, really encourage you to sit with this framework, to go and listen to this episode again if you need to, because this is truly the power of strong storytelling. Once you learn how to confidently articulate your worth, once you learn how to really talk about yourself and the work that you did in a way that grips the listener, the hiring manager, you will finally be able to say bye-bye to imposter syndrome and negotiate what you are truly, truly worth. All right, that's what I had for you today, my proprietary SOAR framework for answering any interview question in a way that truly puts you in control of the interviews. That's it for today's episode of Fearless Career Moves. If this resonated with you, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss what's next, and share it with a woman who's ready to make her next fearless move. And if you are ready to take your career to the next level, make sure to check out The Fearless Hire, my signature career accelerator for ambitious women just like you. You can learn more at www.pinkcareers.com. Until next time, stay fearless.